Listen, I think with the Phoenix Suns,
There
this
we
was a doomsday scenario for them. I think the biggest thing, my takeaway from this all, is how dysfunctional this team was from the inside. That after they lost, a hit piece essentially on Frank Vogel was released.
The game wasn't
a
over
minute after.
for 5 minutes, and Shams just boom tweet Athletic new.
Disgusting.
These are some important quotes from it. After in April, when the Suns lost embarrassingly to the Clippers, when the Clippers were playing none of their players and they got blown out,
Oh, I love that game.
Frank Vogel screamed at the players. He was trying to get them to play harder. And a player that was sourced said that it felt forced, but also he was trying to hold back his laughter because of Frank Vogel getting on the team.
That's not an L on the player.
It is an L on a player. Phoenix's players questioned the coaching staff's inability to structure the offense and maximize the output of a lineup featuring 3 of the game's best scorers. Sources briefed on the matter told The Athletic that Durant never felt comfortable with his role in Phoenix's offense alongside Booker and Beal this season. Those sources said Durant had persistent issues with the offense, feeling that he was being relegated to the corner far too often. I think Frank Vogel looks the best in all of this because shortly after Chris Haynes reported that he wanted a point guard all year long, but the front office never gave him that point guard, I got to credit Frank Vogel because he got a roster that I don't know how much say or power he had in getting the players he truly wanted on the team. The first trade that happened was the DeAndre Ayton trade. The Chris Paul trade then happened. He wanted a point guard that never got it to him the entire year. I'm looking at the fact that, this team won, 49 games on the year? Nurkic had an awesome year for them in the regular season. Really elevated Nurkic and made him an actual serviceable
respectable role player.
Because he's a backup big man. He's not a starting big man. I think Frank Vogel got the most out of a team that was flawed. And all of the team's grievances with each other showed in that Wolf series. They did have stretches where they looked great, where they beat playoff teams like the Cavs and the Timberwolves, and it was looking on the up and up, but they never kept that same consistency. I don't know how much blame I want to give on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I think with Devin Booker, he was relegated to a role that he had never played before in his career.
I agree with this.
With Kevin Durant, from a play style perspective, not much grievances. From a leadership standpoint, it's another example of Kevin Durant not being a leader.
He's never been.
Kevin Durant has never been a leader, and Kevin Durant, since leaving OKC, showcased that he doesn't have the ability to galvanize teammates and have a want to beat a team that has beaten him because he fled to Golden State. I don't want to diminish what he did in Golden State, but that will always be the biggest stain on his resume. The fact that once he left Golden State, didn't get along with Steve Kerr towards the end, goes to Brooklyn, Kenny Atkinson is fired, Steve Nash is handpicked, that flops, then gets traded to Phoenix, and now it seems like there's issues with Frank Vogel. The biggest person in the blame pie for the Phoenix Suns is Matt Ishbia. Mm-hmm. Matt Ishbia came to this team, wanted to win so quickly that he made the wrong moves, the wrong trades. He fit the wrong players together on a roster. He brought in a defensive-minded head coach for an offensive-minded personnel, and it never worked. With that being said, Frank Vogel gets little of the blame because he did the best he could with the flawed roster. The next guy up in the blame, I think, is Bradley Beal, because Bradley Beal being the third best player on the team, he's the one that got to make the ultimate sacrifice. And the way I saw Anthony Edwards rip the competitive spirit out of Bradley Beal's chest in Game 4, it was unlike something I've ever seen. I've never seen a player so defeated. And you go back to those years in Washington when Bradley Beal would go on the bench and he'd throw tantrums and he'd have a towel over his head and he'd look defeated and he'd look like he hated being with the team but never requested a trade. He brought that same energy to Phoenix. And it's one of the biggest reasons that they failed this year because he was unable to adjust to his role, to what they needed him to do. Then he gets the blame. But the front office's lack of moves to surround, I think, KD and D Book and build them a roster that can actually compete is the biggest one of them all. KD doesn't get a pass because his leadership We've seen it for years now that he's not a leader of a team. And I think at this stage of his career, it's sad for a player like him. He might be one of the only Hall of Famers in NBA history that does not have one organization that genuinely wants to retire his jersey. He's a top 15 player of all time. What he did at OKC, unless he goes back and wins a championship with them, I don't think his jersey should be in the Raptors after how he betrayed that team. With Golden State, I don't even think Warriors fans value what he did.
They don't, but he'll get it retired.
I think that's his best shot. But your take right now is a good one.
With the Brooklyn Nets, there's no way in hell.
Hell no.
That sucks too, because you could argue that was his best year of basketball.
And then with the Phoenix Suns, there's no way in hell. No. So you have to bank on the politics behind the organization and saying, you know what, Kevin Durant was so great for us. He deserves this moment. His best chances with OKC, because the resume he built in OKC, an MVP, 3 Western Conference Finals, an NBA Finals appearance so young. But it's just what he did going to Golden State, leaving for the team that just beat you when you were up 3-1. It is something that within that organization, I think it bleeds so much into the fact that I don't even know if they might even want to trade for him. Because I think if they trade for him, it's giving them a competitive advantage, but it's also giving KD an out to restore his legacy in OKC.
I won't say that that's a bad thing. I say this as a LeBron fan who watched his favorite player completely change the perception of how people viewed him on the outside looking in when he went from Miami back home to Cleveland once he did deliver a championship. If KD were able to vindicate his wrongs and go back to OKC and deliver them a championship, he would be seen in a completely different light. I do firmly believe that. I will say he will probably get his number retired in OKC. They retired Nick Collison's number. They will retire his.
That's a great point.
Nick Collison's legend.
OKC legend. Got his number
OKC
retired
legend,
for
for
a
sure.
reason. They will retire
Do
his
OKC
number.
fans fuck with Nick Collison or KD more?
Kevin Durant. They fuck with Kevin Durant more. I can't be convinced otherwise. I get it. He snaked them. And he did something that I don't think anybody
Bad,
anticipated
bad.
that he would do. I think we thought he would leave. There was a better chance of him leaving in our eyes and going to a team like Boston, a team like Washington, because that was home. Maybe even the Spurs, where that was still a very competitive team, but they weren't the overwhelming favorite. You went to the team that just beat you after you were up 3-1. That's what really was the stabbing in the back to all OKC fans. I still think he has a chance to get his number retired in Golden State. You delivered two finals and 2 finals MVPs. But if you are a supporter of Kevin Durant, when is enough for you? What more do you want if you are Kevin Durant? Now there's reports saying that you are upset with how you were used in the offense. You're Kevin Durant. You have a say in what goes on. At least you should.
Biggest say.
You're one of the best players in the league. You're one of the best players that's ever touched a basketball. How do you not have a say? Agreed with you. Frank Vogel most definitely looks the best in all this because he's an actual coach. I watched that over there in LA, and they scapegoated him once in LA for blaming him for everything that went down with Russell Westbrook, even though he wanted to move Russell Westbrook to the bench, but front office was persistent. Please put him back into the starting lineup. That's what we want. That's what we're asking of you. He got scapegoated there. He goes to Phoenix, and now they're scapegoating him once again. I don't want to give Devin Booker a pass because he did not play well in games 1 through 3, was excellent in game 4. But now this goes back to Frank Vogel. He knew the obvious problem. It was identifying, not that this is a knock on Devin Booker. You're a 2 guard. That is okay. You're not a true facilitating guard. That is all right. You can do this. You have those attributes, but that's what makes you so special at the 2 when you have a 1 next to you, like we saw with Chris Paul. And Bradley Beal's another one where it's hard to be the 3rd scoring option when your 2 scoring options in front of you are arguably 2 of the top 5 scorers in the league. You have to find and pick your moments and be really meticulous of it. That kind of overwhelms the people watching the games to make you feel like you're really making an impact. You look at Bosh, you look at Kevin Love. Those are kind of the 2 examples that I take from this. But the one rare example where we saw all 3 hit at once, even though it was for only 16 games, was Kyrie, Harden, and KD. We kind of were anticipating that, but Beal's not those 2 other players.
He's not Harden.
He's not Harden. He's not Kyrie.
Because Harden played point guard.
It's not
Correct.
even. I don't even think it's
There was a point guard. The Suns never had that.
I think it's that too, but I
Yes.
think it's when you are playing with the same guys like you, the court becomes smaller. It starts to shrink because your spots are their spots, and if they're better than you, why would you even think to dare to go? Like Kevin Durant's on your team. Why do you think you're going to Kevin Durant's spot? Devin Booker's on your team. Why do you think you're going to go to Devin Booker's spot? They are the mid-range kings. So it's like, where are you going to find your spots, your touches? Where are you going to find your niche in this offense? So I think that was the biggest thing for Beal. Like, and you mentioned it, man. First of all, the matchup was nuts in itself. For sure. I don't know whose idea was it. I get it. They had no other choice, but Ant-Man completely, like, it wasn't, like, he made Bradley Beal look like a high schooler. That's how bad the matchup was. Like, he completely destroyed him. Games 1 through 4, was talking crazy. You know, you love the playoff vibes out there. Oh, yeah. Not only talking crazy, locking him up, scoring on him, everything. He just completely destroyed him, and Bradley Beal was frustrated, aggravated, couldn't get it going. I like the fact that he, he did go in joking, though, like, I'll be damned, because, he understands, like, yeah, listen, man, you lose. It is what it is.
Go out on your sword. I respect that.
Have some fun with it. Talk about the Suns, man. Frank Vogel did get scapegoated, I feel like he, in that article, he did talk about how, or it was a different article that said he wanted a point guard. He felt this team needed a real point guard.
They name dropped TJ?
I don't think in that one they name dropped somebody.
That's a guy.
I know.
No, that would have been cool. He a little
That
small.
would have fed families right there.
He a little small, but that would have been cool.
But he's gritty.
And I think having a point guard that understands the feel for the game, understands pace, space, understands when to slow it down, when to speed it up. Like, I think having that real feel as a point guard is just something you can't just teach. And I think Devin Booker, Bradley Beal has always been score first type 2 guards. So even though they can be, secondary playmakers, they're not primary guys. That's just not their game. And I think Frank Vogel, I said it in the offseason, man, this is not a roster built for him. You've seen his Indiana days, how successful he was. He had a rim protector. He had multiple wing defenders. He had a pesky guard in George Hill and Darren Collison. If he did coach that team, I don't actually remember. But I remember the teams where they were making the consistent playoffs. George Hill was that pesky shooting guard.
No, that was Frank, yeah.
Yeah. And then, no, I'm saying I don't remember if he coached in 2008 when they had
Got you.
They had George Hill, Paul George. They had Lance. Like, they had that grit, that hungry tenacious, kind of like how Minnesota is with the toughness.
Yeah.
That's those Indiana Pacers team, and Frank Vogel coached them a hell of a way. He had them elite defense at the elite defense.
Facts.
That's even with the Lakers. You guys were a great
Number one defense.
Because when you give him the personnel, that's his thing. And this team is an offensive-minded team, a team built around offense in which they should have got an offensive mind. And now you're kind of putting Frank Vogel in a position where, well, this is not really my strength. I'm going to go out here and give it a go. They don't have the personnel. Now you're looking at it as like players didn't respect him. Somebody tried to laugh at him when he was yelling crazy. I would do some shit like that too, though. I do be laughing when something get too serious. But, players just didn't respect him. And unfortunately,
it's a lack of professionalism for me, though.
It is. It's tough because you didn't come to play. You completely got manhandled by Minnesota. And you had the audacity to look at your coach the wrong way. But in reality, you should all look at yourselves in the mirror. So I feel like Frank is probably going to get fired. I feel like he's probably going to get the blame. Kevin Durant talking about it's not the system for him. Like, listen, all that sounds cool and all, but you guys are one of the 10 to 12 best players in the world, so you have to start figuring it out. But I think it starts, you mentioned, I think who you mentioned first?
HBO.
Who?
The owner.
And the blame
Yes.
pie?
Yeah. It definitely starts with the FO. They get first blame. Then it trickles down. I think Bradley Beal goes too, because it's just ridiculous how you play. First, you was injured. I ain't gonna put that on you, but first you was injured. Then because you wasn't even fully available. Then you come in, you got your chain snatched.
He was cooking last couple months of the season.
Yeah, but April runs are funny, and then late March runs are hilarious too.
They're funny when you're not competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I wasn't like, if you shown me something for 40 to 50 plus games those last 10, 15, I'm not going to be
balling in March. He balled in February. He balled in April.
Maybe. I'll have to.
April's also like 5 games.
The March, for sure. But that March stretch, he was very good.
The Suns went on a stretch there where the fourth quarter numbers came up. You could look at the records, the offense and defensive numbers. I think the KD issue, to me, it just kind of stems from his personality. I think, Joel, you might have mentioned in the beginning, just kind of the lack of leadership that we've seen from KD over the years, where if things aren't going right in the offense, I don't think he's going to be the one to step up and be like, Coach, we need to fix X, Y, and Z. He's always seemed like more of the reserve type to say, this is how you're going to fit in the offense. Even though you're Kevin Durant, you should feel like you have, number one, the ability, and number two, the right to say, this is how I want to be run in our offense, even if you have two other ball-dominant players like Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. But the issues with the Suns stem from when they made the Bradley Beal trade, when they signed 7 guys to vet minimum contracts the first hour free agency opened. All of these issues or the questions that came into the season never really got answered, in my opinion. Even when Bradley Beal was playing well, even when the Suns were playing well, I think there were still always questions around how are the role players going to look, especially once Grayson Allen goes out. And now that huge weakness now becomes maybe the biggest weakness out of all of these playoff teams, because now you're really not looking at anyone you could trust. It's Royce O'Neal and a bunch of, you got Josh Okogie out there giving you some good effort minutes, but it's tough to really rely on that if you want to win a playoff series. But the biggest issue right now is you got no cap space. You're over the second apron. You're not going to be able to really drastically improve this roster. You could go out there, and I believe they have the 22nd overall pick in this draft. You could sign different vet minimum guys to 1-year deals and hope 1 or 2 of them pop off. Number 2, as you guys mentioned, you don't have a point guard. And again, you don't really have the areas to find a point guard, at least a point guard that you feel comfortable with starting a playoff series. And number 3, it's the lack of perimeter defenders. I think Devin Booker, especially we saw last season in the playoffs, when he's locked in defensively, he's a really good defender. Kevin Durant, maybe not the quickest on his feet anymore, but I still think he's a strong defender when he's locked in. But when your best players have to also be your best defenders, like for example, Ant Edwards, tremendous defender. But it's also nice when you have Jaden McDaniels and you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. When Ant has to drop 40, you could put someone else on Kevin Durant or Devin Booker to be like, you know what, Ant, take off for this quarter. You know what, Ant, take off for this 6-minute stretch. We need you on offense. When you have the Phoenix Suns, you just don't have that.
No.
I mean, you don't have the dudes that you're gonna trust to guard other top level players. And of course, every team around the league is looking for that. But I think it was really obvious with the Suns team. So those are the 3 biggest issues: no point guard, lack of perimeter defenders, and you don't really have a way to improve this roster going into 2024.
I think I want to show my respect to Booker and KD. They got swept, but they didn't go out sorry in game 4.
No, they didn't.
Nah, they balled
They
out.
gave their best punch, and they just lost because of all those problems you mentioned, Dels. When you're a fan of a team, the only way that you become attached to an era of basketball that was amazing is if you don't have any great moments after that. That's why before Jalen Brunson came to the Knicks, before Randall came to the Knicks, the best thing I had was the 2012 Knicks and then making the playoffs.
Yep.
But when you're a team like Golden State, who we had success before KD, we had success after KD. You're not too attached to that era of basketball.
Nah.
When you're a team like OKC, that, well, after KD left, we got an MVP Westbrook year, and now we arguably got the best future in the NBA with our big 3 and the treasure chest of draft picks we have. And this time around, this team could do what that team never did because it was broken up too early. These teams, these fan bases, don't hold that same attachment to the eras of basketball when Kevin Durant played for them because they have things to look forward to. And I think it's the most unfortunate part about KD's career is that a player as great as him, he should never have not one organization that doesn't have overwhelming admiration for him as a player. But at the same time, it's his fault. He could have stayed at OKC. He could have stayed in Golden State. It was between him and Klay Thompson. That's who they were picking between. He could have stayed in Golden State. He didn't. And all year long in Golden State, if you guys remember that year, there were reports he was leaving.
Yep.
And he always denied them and always made them sound like it was hearsay. And then all of those reporters ended up looking right because he did exactly what he said where it was just BS in the media. He did exactly that. I don't know who leaked this stuff to The Athletic. I think it was a combination of players, people inside the organization.
You think KD?
I think there's definitely somebody from KD's camp who leaked some stuff. KD's not getting to his spots like he usually does. He's not being used right. The Athletic article, to me, for the most part, felt very much like Vogel isn't taken serious as a coach. It's a knock on Vogel.
Yep.
Beal and Booker can't play point guard. It's a knock on Beal and Booker.
Yep.
The offensive assistant, Kenny Young, the offensive coach, he couldn't get us in the right spots. That's a knock on Kenny Young. And it very much kind of paints KD in the best light.
Yep.
It tried to, at least. And I don't know who did it. You know, a lot of Suns fans are speculating this Isaiah Thomas. I don't know why it'd be him.
Isaiah Thomas. He just
I don't know.
got there.
I don't know why it'd be him.
Was he even there for when he got yelled at?
Nah, he was there. He was
Might
there.
have been, he probably
He
was
was on
laughing.
10 he might have been on 10 day at the time.
I think it's unfortunate. I think the Suns, it sucks because, the team made the finals. Whether or not you chalk it up to the opponents they faced that were injured, sometimes you get lucky like that. There's no doubt. The next year you lose in the second round.
It sucks. LA would have won.
The next year you lose in the second round. But then since you traded all your entire championship core, that's as far as you've gotten. And you just got embarrassed in the first round. I understand it might be a long shot and people might want to do it over the KD trade, but you definitely feel solid about a core that features Booker, Mikal, Cam Johnson, Ayton, I think still to this day, and you just draft players and scout well so they can come in and fit on the team. I think you at least feel like, maybe it might not be a championship, but we can be a consistent playoff team, and a move here or there can get us over that hump. Because Mikal Bridges, before he got traded to Brooklyn, he was improving. He was dropping 19 to 21 a game. And that's why when he got traded to Brooklyn, I said, I think he's going to really excel because he is improving internally in his game. If they had that improvement from Mikal and they stuck with him, they got a new coach for Ayton. With Portland, he's looked great with Chauncey in the second half of the year. There were ways to maybe make tweaks to this
March
team.
and April runs.
Yeah,
Now we can
DeAndre
talk.
in March and April.
For those type of players, we could cook.
That's what I'm
That's some
saying.
agendas here, man. Like, who had great March, April runs? Jalen Green?
Low key, Scoot Henderson.
Low key.
They don't want to talk about it though.
Here we go. Real rookie of the year. Amen.
Amon's been here all
Calm
year.
down. Bro said a real rookie of the year. Jesus Christ.
I think it'd be silly to
7'6"
fire
guys
Frank
just
Vogel.
don't move me, man.
Frank, I mean, who are you going to go out there and hire that's going to be a better coach than Frank Vogel? That just seems like we don't have any moves to make.
Do you consider Bud?
You do, but who wants to coach this team?
Yeah.
They're in hell. I mean, I think they'll run it back one more year. They have
Do you
to.
At
think
least the
JJ
deadline.
Redick thinks about it?
Hell no.
No.
He's
I think
thinking
you
about
have
the
to-
Hornets.
The Hornets got a
different.
brighter
You can start
future.
fresh.
The Hornets got LaMelo and Brandon Miller.
think
Those
you
are
have
two
to trade-
building.
Also, you got younger players. that
trade
could
Kevin Durant.
have an
You have to
impression
trade
on.
Grayson Allen. If you want to compete, you have to trade Grayson Allen.
What about? Can you compete while also trading Kevin Durant?
No. Bradley Beal also has a no trade clause.
mean, you
So
could-
That's
playing team, maybe.
Beal actually being on this team is going to be the dagger.
there's
Unfortunately,
I mean,
no
you can't
trade
trade
clause.
him.
You can't-
there's nothing. Yeah.
It's gonna
you
be
need
hard.
him. But Loki, you need him.
Yeah, but he's a backup big. He's
It's
making
sad
15
because
now.
Hardenstein is going to be a free agent this year. If you had some money, you could have threw a bag at
He
him.
would have been perfect for them.
They
I
never
think
would have.
Hardenstein
Even
come
with
back.
Beal, they wouldn't have had the money.
No, that's what I'm saying because you wanted to go get him. Be
If
a
I'm the
weirdo.
Knicks, I do everything I can
The
to
thing
bring
with the
Hardenstein
Suns,
back.
the margin for error is so slim that it just makes sense to trade KD at his highest value. I mean, if he has another All NBA year, then it really doesn't matter trading him this year or next year. You can run it back. If everybody's just talking about the rebuild part of this team, if they don't rebuild, Beal, Nurkic, you got to try to find something for them,
But then
and
Beal
they
has
have to
say
be off
yes.
the team.
He's a no trade
I know
clause.
that's the toughest part.
Yeah.
But I seen
Got to
Kenny's
hit on your
video
second round picture about the
on
draft.
YouTube. Kenny traded
They got
him
pick
to the
22.
Hornets. Beal.
And Beal was happy with that. He said yes.
Kenny what?
He
didn't
forced
call
the
him Bradley
trade.
Beal.
Kenny what?
He traded him to the Hornets for Nick Richards and Trey Mann.
Oh my god.